Okay, if you're anything like us, you really want the Grenadier to do well in this video because it's so capable and it's so unique. And let's be honest, very, very cool. But despite popping up in the used market now for very appealing prices, there are rumors of water leak issues, and apparently this steering sucks. The interior features, especially the infotainment system, not up to the task.
And the engines are from BMW. Surely that can't be good for reliability or longevity.
Well, how about we take you through what can go wrong with a used Grenadier, show you what ownership might look like, and answer the big question once and for all, should you buy one? How about we answer those questions, because this is ReDriven and that's what we do. Look, as you know, the Grenadier is an all-new vehicle from a brand new company. This is not like buying a Toyota, and because of that, maybe some extra tolerance is needed. And look, we're not suggesting that you're going to end up being a guinea pig for the company or anything like that, but maybe working with the brand rather than against it could work in your favour. For example, the outer door seals have been known to fail, as have the seals for the Safari windows and the drain hose. And unfortunately, that can let water into the interior. The good news is though, Ineos have issued a service bulletin for this, and owners have claimed that once this is all fixed, the problem hasn't come back. Although, if there's water in the passenger side footwell, chances are this is just air conditioning pipe condensation. It's more of a design flaw, not a leak. But to fix it, you could just insulate the pipes, or you could just let the water sit there and then let it drain out through the floor plugs. Actually, you know what? You probably should get this fixed under warranty, or at least check the vehicle's history to make sure that the previous owner has. Actually, you know what? If you are buying a used Grenadier, just like any used car, you need to find out as much as you possibly can about the car's history. In fact, we ran a little experiment. See, we found a used Grenadier advertised online and we decided to run a motor registry vehicle history report on it. And despite the listing not stating anything about any accident damage, according to the report, there it is right there, accident damage in the last 12 months. And look, obviously this is not Ineos's fault at all, and we're not suggesting any funny business from the dealer either, because they might not have all of the information all of the time. But what it does mean, you could end up buying a crash damaged car without even knowing. So if you want easily the most comprehensive vehicle history reports in the country on a used car that you're buying, or maybe even on the car that you own now, hit the link below or scan the QR code. But as brilliant as these reports are, unfortunately, they won't show you how weird the steering is in these. You know that tolerance that I mentioned earlier? Yeah, that's instantly tested the minute you start turning the steering wheel. It feels old school and honestly pretty vague and very reluctant to ever return back to center. But that's sort of the trade-off for off-road durability over, Westfield car park maneuverability. Plus, Ineos have listened to the criticisms about the steering, because for 2026 they have added a variable ratio steering box, and that'll hopefully end the old 4 turns lock-to-lock aerobic workout you have to do every time you want to turn the bloody thing. But I do wonder if that updated steering will fix the other issue with this, which is the fact it has a turning circle which is about the same as an athletic field. And the 2026 update apparently fixed this absolutely shithouse air conditioning. Okay, look, that is being way too harsh, but when doing the research for this video, the HVAC was easily the biggest complaint we came across. Owners have reported just erratic temperature controls and an airflow that would struggle to blow out a candle in the middle of a tornado. However, after talking to some of the techs, apparently if you just fix the hardline seal to fix the leaks, that sorts out most of the HVAC issues. Although, in saying that, honestly, the HVAC system is not a standout at all. It's not terrible, but on a scorching hot day, you'll instantly understand why Ineos have now upgraded it. However, they haven't upgraded the windscreens, the washer nozzles, or the door mirrors, all of which have copped some criticism. But starting with the windscreen, it's a boxy vehicle. Of course stone chips are going to happen, but no more than, say, a Wrangler or a G-Wagon. Also, the interwebs has blown this out of proportion. They don't shatter without some kind of decent impact. Also, check the owners groups and forums for advice with the windscreens, because plenty have had success with rubber seals or protection film. Or just make sure that windscreen replacement is covered in your insurance policy, because OEM glass, we've seen quotes anywhere from $800 to $1,300 for replacements. Then the washer nozzles. Look, yeah, these are known to clog up. It was a factory issue where there's too much sealant in there and it kind of stuffed it up. But they're so easily replaced and that'll fix the problem. Then there are complaints about the driver's side mirror not kind of tilting outwards enough. Really? Have you tried just kind of moving your head? Because I haven't had a problem with this. And look, granted, I'm not towing with it, but extendable mirrors are available. But aside from those minor complaints about the exterior, we really struggled to find anything else going wrong with these. In fact, we actually came across more compliments about the exterior than anything going wrong with them. Even that, like the way that sounds and feels. I haven't had much experience with a bank vault, but I'm pretty sure it sounds like that. Anyway, plenty of owners that have been converting from Toyota, Nissan and Land Rover rave about the rugged build quality, even after tens of thousands of kilometers of serious adventuring. Also, look, I know discussing design and aesthetics isn't exactly the done thing in this category of vehicle, but Ineos have nailed this. In terms of a modern interpretation of the original Defender, Ineos have done a better job than Land Rover. Plus, it looks the business in both wagon and quartermaster ute body styles, and no matter which trim spec. But a quick warning, and I know this from personal experience, if you're going to spend any time on the Ineos configurator, maybe set aside more time than you're anticipating, because the sheer amount of standard kit and accessories you can bolt to these things, it seems endless. Actually, you know what? This raises a really good point, because in standard form, for the money, these pretty much outspec everything else in this class. New, you're looking from say $106,000 to a bit over 120 grand, and on the used market, about 75,000 to maybe 130. And this can mean that in terms of depreciation, these cannot match, say, a Land Cruiser or a Defender. But let's be honest, very few vehicles can. But on paper, this thing's direct competitor is the 76 or the 79 series, which look, yes, brand new, are cheaper than these, but to get them to match this in terms of specs and what they offer, my God, you got to spend some money on the Land Cruisers. Both Land Cruiser and Grenadier have body-on-frame chassis, solid axles, lockers front and rear, and both prioritise off-road ability and utility over luxury. However, the Land Cruiser might need some rear track correction. The Grenadier doesn't. The Grenadier has recovery points at the front and at the rear as standard. The Land Cruiser doesn't. The Toyota lacks some sound deadening, but the Ineos, it does have sound deadening. Dual battery system with pre-wiring all installed with switches and fuses. In one of these, yep. In the Toyota, nope. Tyre pressure and temperature monitors for the diffs and the transmission and the coolant in this, all standard. In the 70 series, not. And you can hose out the interior of a Grenadier just like you can with the Land Cruiser. But these have these absolutely wonderful Recaro seats. The overall materials of the interior and just the general fit and finish feels substantially higher grade than what you'll find in the Toyota. But look, overall, the quality is outstanding. Like, everything just feels so nice to actually touch and use. And design-wise, I think it's the perfect balance of being a little bit kind of futuristic, perfect for an EV. But again, it's just, everything's intuitive and just easy to live with. Although, there are a couple of isolated reports of some electronic gremlins, nothing too major, just things like sort of the ambient lighting playing up a little bit. Incredibly rare, but not a common problem. You should be fine. Now, as far as practicality in the back seat goes, you've got a little cubby hole here. You've got nets on the backs of the seats in case you go fishing and need to keep your fish somewhere. Door bins that you can actually get to if you have legs and the door is shut. Pull down armrest with two cup holders here, and that's about it for actual practicality. And as far as features go, you've got your own air vents there, you've got more USB ports and some very sexy ambient lighting. Also, I'm exactly 15 centimeters taller than Celebrity Ioniq 5 owner and Bollywood icon SRK. This isn't my driving position. Have a look at the amount of space I've got. Like, copious amounts of knee and foot room. Like, there's so much room for activities. No transmission tunnel, so even if you're in the middle, there's plenty of room there. Also, even though this car doesn't have the panoramic roof, it still feels so airy and spacious in here. With the panoramic roof though, it feels enormous inside. There can be a problem with it though. It lets so much light in that the car can heat up. You can precondition the car's, cooling system so it's cool when you get in, but plenty of owners claim that the roof can be actually a nightmare in hot Aussie summers. Also, on some of the really early models, they could have some issues with some of the glass cracking and maybe even shattering, not just for the roof, but also these side windows and the rear hatch. Luckily, dealerships were very, very quick to replace all this stuff under warranty. Although, just check through the owners groups and the forums on the kind of service you might receive at the various Hyundai dealerships, because apparently it can be very hit and miss. And the same goes for the paint quality, especially on the matte finish cars. The matte finish is apparently a bit of a nightmare to maintain, and it can mark really, really easily, and requires kind of specific ways of washing and cleaning. Also, a few owners have complained about the front bar paint chipping really easily. Also, a few owners complained of just some paint discrepancies from the dealership and even some etching on the glass. It's weird. Also, the stupid door handles that protrude like this. Why couldn't they just have a normal door handle? It's like the bloody mirrors. Like, these things have worked perfectly fine for decades and they've got to go and stuff around with it. Stop it. But look, the complaint with these from owners isn't that they're unreliable. They're actually quite good, unlike certain Teslas out there. The problem is when the car's unlocked, they protrude out like this. And for some, it can be an invitation just to get in the car or maybe try to steal it. However, there is a solution. There is an aftermarket auto lock device from the Ionic guy. Just check through the owners groups and forums, all the answers are there. Also, theft has become quite an issue for these, often using like key relay tech. Now, Hyundai have rolled out software updates and updated key fobs to hopefully stop these pieces of shit from stealing your car. We just recommend kind of going old school and getting a little Faraday pouch for your keys. Also, there are other costs to consider as well. Let's talk insurance. Insurance on an EV is generally substantially more than, say, on an equivalently sized hybrid. Plus, when it comes to charging, those prices can vary, let alone if you have to install solar panels or a charger in your house, the costs can blow out. Basically, what we're trying to say here is that, yeah, you might save money by not having to put petrol in your car anymore, but depending on your situation, it might just not make any financial sense when you consider all of the costs involved. Look, as we always say, EVs are an absolute no-brainer for some, and they make absolutely no sense for others. And while a lot of people were concerned about, say, the resilience of all the interior plastics and the materials in general, owners have reported these things are absolutely bulletproof. Plus, this is also incredibly well laid out. Also, there's a real sense of occasion to this interior. In the 70 series these days, it just feels, I don't know, for me, a bit cheap and nasty. Plus, there are 6 airbags in here. In the Toyota, probably 2, maybe 5. These also come standard with a tow bar and a tow wiring harness pre-installed. On the 70 series and even the 300 series, that's an optional extra you have to pay for. Even spotlights are standard on this. Plus, unlike the part-time four-wheel drive in the Land Cruiser, in which you can use 6 gears in high range and 4 in low range, this has an 8-speed auto, which is all drive all the time, and you can use all 8 gears in high and low range. And not only that, this thing, honestly, it's on a whole other level compared to any 70 series. And look, if you prefer the driving dynamics of like a commercial delivery truck, sure, buy a 70 series. But if you want genuine refinement and off-roading capability that'll blow most things out of the water, this thing nails it. Okay, look, it doesn't feel anywhere near as, let's say, bougie as a Defender, or actually even compared to a 300 series or a Y62 Patrol for that matter. But this thing, it just feels like it has sort of more off-road intent, like it's more purposeful than those vehicles. And you know what, for me, that's such an easy compromise to deal with considering this thing's capability. But look, overall, this thing is such a joy to drive. This powertrain is silky smooth and like it has decent acceleration. Also, the ride and handling, it doesn't feel anywhere near as like truck-like as you might expect. Same as the wind noise, there's not a whole lot of it. This feels, I'm going to say, genuinely special and unique from behind the driver's seat. It's just got so much character and charm about the way it does everything. I mean, even the visibility out of it is excellent. So dealing with a tight, crowded car park, easy. Long freeway trips, not taxing at all. As long as you can ignore your left leg. See, many owners are finding that the footrest position can inspire a bit of the old gamey leg or a bit of a numb bum on a long trip. However, other owners haven't had a problem. As far as a personal suggestion, maybe just adding a daily yoga routine to your life to help your body acclimatise to kind of any weird physical positions you might have to take, like this footrest. Also, like so many modern cars, the infotainment systems aren't without criticism, and it's just all the usual suspects of issues like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, and Bluetooth dropping out, the GPS kind of trying to get you lost, and just the screens kind of having the odd tantrum here and there. However, in saying that, the recent software updates and the 2024 hardware update apparently fixes most of these issues. And then as far as living with this interior, and let's talk spaces for all your crap first, pretty good sized glove box there. This little spot here will hold your phone perfectly well. 2 cup holders, but the little fingery things that hold your drinks aren't quite fingery enough to hold one of my small pretentious coffees. Good little storage bin under here. Door bins, good size. Scratchy plastics, which means things are going to rattle around, but it also means they're very resilient. That's going to collect all kinds of filth and dust. There's no sunglasses holder up here. There's nothing kind of under here, nothing under the seat. Oh, there's a little tray up here, but anything you put there is going to slide right off the minute you go around a corner. It's okay for practicality. But to use this interior, oh my God, what a joy. I'm almost trying to find reasons to push buttons because everything's just so enjoyable to use. This rotary controller for the infotainment system, the feel of this, oh, it's just wonderful. Honestly, how am I just falling so in love with buttons? Oh, it's great. Also, I love the toot button. And look, if I had to be really, really picky, I do despise that it has this kind of curvaceous BMW shift knob plonked amongst this sort of utilitarian aesthetic. That shits me. But besides that, everything else in here is just so considered. In fact, everything over the entire Grenadier just has purpose. There's nothing superfluous going on. Brilliant. Actually, as far as what features you're going to get, it comes with everything you'd expect. And obviously the off-roading kit is massively extensive. And to go through everything that's possible with this screen, it would take me a day or two to explain it to you. We're not going to. But just know the Trial Master, it takes off-roading even more seriously, while the Field Master, it's a little bit more luxury focused for a Grenadier. However, you have to remember, the levels of customization in these things is just off the charts. So on the used market, even if you're finding two Grenadier of the same trim spec, there's a high chance they won't actually have the same stuff. Let alone if you're planning on fitting sort of any accessories. Actually, just on that, if you're planning on doing that, make sure you hit the Automotive Superstore link below because they carry an enormous range of parts and accessories for not just these, but really every car. And to get 15% off and free express shipping on some of the best wiper blades in the business, hit the WiperTech link below down there. We know from experience they are bloody awesome. But in the back seat, I'm around about 5 centimeters taller than fiscally robust founder of Ineos, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. This is in my driving position and really good. Fun fact for you, we filmed a 300 series Land Cruiser yesterday, and this has more knee room and more foot room than the 300 series. Also, the seats are really bloody comfortable. I love this armrest here. That just works an absolute treat. I wasn't expecting the back of this to be so good. Loads of headroom as well, big square windows, just great. Then as far as features and practicality back here, you've got your own air vents, USB ports here. Like the front, these are going to collect all sorts of filth. It has door bins. What's the point of the door bins? Because when the door is closed, it's sort of hidden behind the seat, so you can't get anything out of it. But where are the cup holders? In this day and age, I don't think this has any cup holders in the back. Owners, am I missing something? Where the bloody hell are they? And before any of you say, oh, the cup holders are in the doors, well, that means I've got to open the door to get to it. That's just shit. Then in the back, the boot space is very nearly class leading. Only really the Y62 Patrol offers more boot space than this. Interestingly as well, unlike a 300 series Land Cruiser, this has pretty decent lighting for the boot, although the whole 30-70 split tailgate thing can take a little bit of getting used to. And then as for the Quartermaster, the tub is comparable to other dual cab utes. Often it's a little bit longer but narrower than say a Ranger or a Hilux, and payload is competitive with everything bar the Ranger Super Duty. As for towing, the Grenadier is pretty much on par with a 70 series Land Cruiser, although these are slightly heavier, so that can impact your GVM and your GCM. But the thing is, we haven't discussed the big elephant in the room yet, and it's the fact that these use BMW engines. And as we all know, often European power plants don't have a great reputation for longevity or reliability. Is the Grenadier going to fall victim to that? Well, unfortunately, I can't tell you because I'm not a qualified mechanic. Luckily, Jim is.
Yeah, because there's not a lot of these around, a lot of this information is coming from BMW sources. And both the petrol and the diesel are actually detuned compared to these engines when they're in a BMW. And that means there's less stress on the engine's internals. I'll start with the petrol. Look, this engine internally is actually very good, but a lot of the ancillaries on the outside, yeah, somewhat questionable. One of the common issues with these is the oil filter housing. Look, that can leak oil and coolant both internally and externally, and you can expect that to start leaking anywhere from 80,000 kilometres. They have a heat management module, which is basically an expensive and elaborate thermostat. There's a lot of moving parts in there. There's rotary valves, there's seals, there's actuators. Look, all of that can fail. They can leak or they can just stop working. Now, it is located in a fairly hard to get at spot on the engine. You need to take the manifold off. And also, that is quite close to the oil filter housing. So if you have a problem with either the oil filter housing or the heat management module, you might want to do both while you're in there. And look, a lot of the cooling system on these is made of plastic, and as they age, look, we know historically any plastic component in a cooling system is likely to fail. Now the Vanos solenoids or the magnetic actuators, look, they are prone to leaking and they can fail and stop actuating. Those solenoids are located at the back of the cylinder head, and in a configuration like a car in a BMW, they're quite hard to get at. But in these, there's a bit more room, so that's a bonus. Now the timing chains on a B58 are at the back of the engine as well. Thankfully, so far, they're actually pretty good, but keep in mind if you do have an issue, you will have to take the engine or the transmission out to fix it. But yes, so far, they're actually pretty good. Now the diesels. Look, they are a single turbo configuration and actually very reliable. They don't have a Valvetronic system, so there's less to go wrong. They do have a plastic inlet manifold, and sometimes the swirl flaps and the swirl flap actuators can be problematic, and they are very much prone to clogging up with higher mileage. Now they are prone, like every modern day diesel, to have EGR complications and some DPF issues as well. Now if you're having a DPF issue, it's often not the DPF, it's usually one of the other supporting systems. For example, when the map sensor clogs up, and they do, that will cause a DPF complication. You need to take the map sensor out and clean it every other service. But the thermofan will be going off its head. In other cases, it's a problem with the thermostat. But either way, a lot of people will tell you, and I agree, if you're going to do the coolant temp sensor, you should do the thermostat at the same time. The supercharger, more so in the earlier models, did have some bearing issues. And any boost leak or manifold leak or intercooler leak, that will also result in a DPF complication. So you just need to make sure everything else is right before you go blaming a DPF. Some owners with these have complained about they are very much aware when it's doing a DPF regeneration. Some people say they can smell it, and other people complain about the fans running all the time. Look, I wouldn't worry. That is just how these are, and it's just doing what it's supposed to do. The transmission in these, it is a ZF HP, and they are a very solid unit. If you just service it when it's due, you are very unlikely to have actually any issues with it at all. And the same can be said for the transfer case and the rest of the driveline, actually very solid. Now these things are so popular on the tuning and aftermarket scene. There is plenty of parts you can get, and there's plenty of horsepower to be made here. And it goes without saying, really, if you're going to lean on it and make more horsepower, you can expect way more complications. But overall, mechanically speaking, like any high performance engine, servicing is the key here. You just got to service it every 5,000 Ks if you're leaning on it, and every 10,000 Ks if you're just daily driving it. And speaking of servicing, some fun facts about the V8 supercars here in Australia. Now you might think that these engines, being race engines, are rebuilt after every race or every 2 races. It's actually not the case. Their goal in these engines is 8,000 Ks, and they're trying to stretch it out to 10,000 kilometres. And the top ends get a rebuild after about every 4,000 Ks. Now, if it does need a full rebuild, that can cost in excess of 40 grand a pop. So yeah, you can see why they try to stretch them out as long as they can. Overall, mechanically, these are actually very good. And to be honest, if I was looking to get a vehicle like this would definitely be on my shortlist.
Now, we know that one of the big concerns with INEOS being a brand new company is what's the story with support and parts and all that kind of stuff? Well, despite some early teething issues, owners now praise the support, citing express parts shipping to remote areas, and dealers and INEOS here in Australia going above and beyond to build a solid reputation. And it seems to be working, because owners that have come from Land Cruisers and Prados and Patrols and vehicles like that are quickly becoming brand converts, and they're claiming that the Grenadier is easily the best vehicle they've ever owned. And interestingly, even though INEOS initially thought that most of the customer base would come from previous Land Rover or at least Defender owners, it's not. Most people buying these are coming from Toyotas and Nissans. And also, while the depreciation at the moment won't match the Japanese giants, I have a theory. Often niche vehicles, like the comparable Mercedes G300 CDI Professional, drop in value initially before retaining their value, sometimes even exceeding the original MSRP. Could these do the same? I mean, once the market sort of understands the Grenadier's quality and its support, and the fact that it has easily one of the most dedicated communities surrounding it, I've got a feeling used prices might start going up. And that can mean now might be the time to buy one. And we think you should, as long as it passes a full pre-purchase inspection. And if it does, yeah, get one. I want one. Still, as awesome as these can be, you should probably also watch this.
Now because you know, start it and stop again.
Or the door mirrors, all of which have features and technology and equipment in one of these, and you will.
2014 onwards, they